Good morning everyone, and welcome back to the forest garden. It's nice to see you all again. It's been a little while, hasn't it? The last video I made publicly was the meadow management one with the ponies grazing the grass. They were supposed to come up for a couple of hours a day throughout the winter to graze all the meadow grass, but it has been so wet of late I've not been able to bring them up because their hooves would have muddied it up too much and destroyed a lot of the wildflower roots. But it's now the 12th of March, things are starting to grow, and there is still last year's grass to cut and remove, but there's still time. There has been a lot going on beyond the garden for me personally, but also in the garden, on the homestead. I really ought to have silenced my telephone before pressing record, but this is a little bit spontaneous. I don't know what I'm going to say yet. Let's see how it goes. That's usually the case though, isn't it? On a hill
near a wood,
where nobody goes,
up a track,
through a gate,
The food forest grows
with secrets and treasures for everyone's pleasure, and Rob's discovery.
Yeah, there's been a lot going on beyond the garden, but also here on the homestead in the forest garden, and I do hope to show you around in a minute. But since recording that morning sequence with me letting the ducks out a few minutes ago, the wind has really picked up and I fear for the quality of the microphone, so I'll speak with you here for a couple of minutes, and then when the wind drops down we'll have a little walk around the garden to see what's going on. But it is a glorious sunny spring-like morning out there. It's quite a yellowy month, March, isn't it, with the daffodils and primroses and the brimstone butterflies and this wonderful cool winter sunshine. This is the first day it's been sunny for months, it seems like. There was a weekend a couple of weeks ago when the sun shone and I actually managed to do a few things in the garden, but apart from that it has been grey since last year. Unnaturally so. But even so, it's so uplifting to have a day like this. But before I get on with jobs in the garden, I just had to show you around because it has been a while. Despite the sunshine, it's still pretty nippy out there. There have been a few frosty nights, not quite as many as in the days of old, but there's still time, and second winter is probably on the way before the spring properly kicks in. And my wood burning stove just here, I have kept it going day and night since November, and what a difference it makes having a dry, warm space to come into. Please excuse my washing. I did a load of washing yesterday and it's hanging about everywhere in the yurt here. It would be a good day for drying it outside, but yeah, it's just airing now and I'll put it away later. The fire, I do actually have enough firewood to keep the fire going all the time, but quite controversially for some, I have been using a shovel of coal at night just to keep the fire in, and what a difference that has made to my life. As well as it being warm in here all the time, I don't have to light the fire each morning and each evening when I get home from wherever I am, and just that one shovel of coal means I can just keep it going, then I can put wood on it during the day and just keep it ticking over at night. Can you hear the geese? It's very much the mating season for them. One of the grey geese, one of the grey females, honkers, she has started to lay eggs again. We'll see if we can go and see her on her nest or find any goose eggs in a minute. Do you find it over the winter time? The days are so short. I've just been concentrating on really, well, going to work and sorting the animals out and staying warm. And I imagined on the long dark evenings I would get so much stuff done. I would get newsletters written, I'd get all the films that are on my laptop from last year edited, and I'd do all sorts of wonderful creative work. But what have I done? Nothing. I have at least 70 messages and emails and messages to reply to, so I do apologise if you're one of those people I've not got back to you yet, but I can assure you you're on my list, and maybe you don't even care anymore, maybe it's not applicable, but I will get back to you. And a big thank you to my patrons on Patreon for your constant support, both financial and moral and otherwise. It's really fun speaking with you in our private Telegram chat and all the interesting things you share. And thirdly, in other news, the forest garden tours are commencing. A couple of really keen families have already been in the winter time because they really wanted to get ideas for their own garden, but from next month they will be regularly every week. So if you want to book yourself on a tour, then you can go to my website, robsfoodforest.site it is called. In 6 days' time, on March the 18th, it is the full moon, the plough moon, or the wind moon. Quite appropriate names, given the weather of late. And it's also the time to start tilling the ground, hence the plough moon. It's quite a pivotal time of year. It's this just couple of weeks when, well, traditionally, winter shifts into spring very, very quickly. I really ought to get some things in the ground. I've got a whole drawer, 2 drawers full of seeds over there. Lots of plants to introduce to the garden this year. But I can't plant any plants until I get the cover on my geodesic dome greenhouse, which we will also go and have a look at in a minute. The equinox is on March the 20th, so equal amount of day and night, 12 hours of each. It's a very pivotal time of year in that sense as well, both seasonally and with the day and night cycle. But with the shorter nights and the longer, lighter evenings, I might actually get some stuff done and make some more films. So that'll be good. Mostly. I'm really feeling that it's more important than ever at the moment to grow your own food if you can. Not just for personal gratification, but it gives you preparedness in times of uncertainty. Plus saves you money, which is always a bonus, and it's a really useful skill to have. And you don't have to have a garden, certainly not as big as this one. I mean, you can grow seeds and plants in containers on a balcony or on a windowsill. I mean, you can just grow herbs. There are so many ways to do it. The vast majority of trees and plants growing here in the forest garden are perennial, which is part of the point of the whole thing really. But I am going to concentrate on growing a few more annuals this year. So far, the only annuals I've grown are ones that I couldn't find perennial versions of, like tomatoes and melons, courgettes, beetroot, squashes and pumpkins. But I'm going to try and grow a few more annuals. I mean, the perennial vegetables and plants are wonderful, but that's more of an extensive approach because I've got the space to do it. It's more like creating a foraging landscape for myself. But by growing annuals, I can grow a lot more food in a smaller area because the yield is so much greater. But then they do take a lot more work. They're a lot more needy. But I'm just going to have an experiment with having a couple of victory gardens this year, just to see what it's like. And also to make films about it, because that's one of my purposes in life, is to teach other people how to do it. Well, the wind sounds like it's died down a little bit, so if you'd like to come with me, we're going to have a look around the garden, see what's going on. Beehives here in the forest garden, and about 4 of them, not about 4, exactly 4 of them have thriving colonies of honeybees in. And in all those 4 hives, this is the time of year when the activity within the hive really begins to increase. I'm not sure how well you can see here in this horizontal top bar hive through the glass window. It has an observation window like the Foray hive, but the queen is now beginning to lay eggs to replace all the worker bees that were lost over the winter time, and they're beginning to go out on foraging forays, although they really need dry weather to do that, and it's been so wet recently. This is the first day for a long time they've been able to go out to collect pollen, and today they are collecting from things like the blackthorn flowers and the goat willow and the pussy willow catkins and lots of other flowers in the woods, and primroses and daffodils as well. Now they're getting a little bit fractious and they're wondering what I'm doing opening them up, because they're not used to me doing this. It's been a few months, so I'll close them back up and let's go and see what else we can find. They've all but stopped flying now. It was such a beautiful, sunny, dry March morning, and it's still dry, but it's quite overcast now, so they're not flying as much as the temperature's dropped a little. But it's so important for them to have some good, warm, dry weather to go out collecting pollen and nectar so they can replenish their depleted winter stores. The fox-proof duck and chicken enclosure is now complete, which actually makes quite a difference to my life. If I want to go out in the evening, or at night, or after dark generally, I no longer have to be here to shut the ducks away or let them out at dawn. They have a space in which to mill around, they have fresh water, they have food in the treadle feeders that they have learned how to operate by stepping on the pedal and opening the doors, so the rats can't get to the food. But sometimes crafty squirrels do find a way in and help themselves. But that's okay, apart from when they get stuck in the feeders, and then I've got to let them out. Oh, not again. Come on then, squirrel. Whoa! That was quite a jump. Where have you gone? You'll be back. But it also means that when the ducks and chickens lay their eggs, often in the morning time, although sometimes they lay them in the grass in the garden and I've got to find them, it means that the crows and blackbirds can't come in and steal the eggs, which they frequently would do otherwise. I have had to restrict or banish the geese to that area of land over there beyond mine at the moment. There's plenty of grass in there for them, and I let them out several times a day to bathe themselves in the various ponds, but I acquired 2 new khaki Campbell ducks recently, and I didn't want the geese to terrorise them whilst they were getting used to their surroundings. But also, this electric fence that I'm using to keep the geese in for a year or two into a confined but big area, it's less effective now because I've had to extend it around the meadow areas to keep the horses in, and therefore it's lost a bit of its kick and it doesn't shock the geese so much. But they're quite happy over here, lots of grass and lots of little nesty places to lay eggs. I've just come over to see if we can find any. this isn't mine, this belongs to Bristol Waterworks. It's an old reservoir. Geese have a very short laying season, only a couple of months per year. And alright. I only see 3, but I have 4 geese. So I'm wondering if the other one, the grey one, is perhaps sitting on some eggs somewhere. Her normal place is in this huge bramble patch. And I suspect, yes, a telltale sign of white feathers. Hello, goose. You counting your eggs again? Oh, she's made a lovely nest here. I won't disturb her now. I'll leave her be because it's not fair to go and take away her eggs while she sat on them. And I would let her sit on them, but the thing is, whilst she lays 1 egg a day, and then when she gets to what she deems to be a suitable number, perhaps 5, 6 or 7, then she will start sitting on them, keep them warm, and that will incubate them and they will hatch after 35 days. But I don't want any more geese. And in the time overnight, while she leaves the eggs before going back the next day, she thinks she's hidden them well, which she has quite adequately. But the thing is, rats come and they take the eggs, so it's not going to work anyway. I do feel sorry for her. What do you think? Should I do that? Should I put them back and let her sit? Would you like any geese? Not to eat, but if any of you have any areas of grass you want kept mown, or any sheds you want interfered with, if you want your garden ruined or your tool shed rearranged, then I can highly recommend geese. She's guarded it very, very well. Oh, I think I see another there, look. She's put blackthorn twigs over it. Oh, clever girl. To incubate or not to incubate. Before I finally get round to showing you what's growing, I'm just gonna slip in the mud. But apart from that, I really want to show you how the greenhouse is going. Actually, but even before that, I know that hive is alive with a colony of honeybees because I saw them flying this morning. But it's a bit too overcast and windy for them now. I see no activity. Oh yes, but before that, I wanted to show you a relatively new... I've really got to put my telephone on silent. I really want to show you this. It's a relatively new addition to the forest garden. It's a fairy garden. What do you think? Since being here for the last 11 years, there's always been something about this particular area of the garden, both energy-wise, atmosphere-wise, weather-wise, and botanically speaking, but also visually as well. I already know half of you think I'm nuts, so it's risking nothing to tell you some of the things I've seen entering into the garden at dusk and out again at dawn, but that's a story for another time. this seems to be the chosen point at which things come and go. This garden is a recent addition to the larger garden, and it's more a sign of respect and acknowledgement for the little folk, the other people, nature spirits, and myriad other terms. There are secret doors, little bridges and houses. There's even a teeny tiny bakery where they can do baking. A standing stone and a door that goes to who knows where. Well, I know who knows where. I don't mind being here right in the middle of the day like now, but I daren't come down here at dusk or near dawn for obvious reasons. Oh, or maybe not. Oh, there we go. It has now been nearly a full calendar year since my last greenhouse was taken down. Remember that monstrosity, that higgledy-piggledy mess of scaffolding poles and old polytunnel plastic? It was really functional, grew lots of really good stuff in here. Most of it is actually still growing, and very fortunately it's been a mild winter, so I haven't lost any of my avocados or lemon trees, or the peach tree, that's still in fine fettle. But it's taken such a long time not to construct this dome. That only took about 20 minutes. Well, 40 minutes. It's just taken the time to work out what to do and to dig this trench around the outside of it to tuck the new plastic into when it's covered. But I have the plastic, I've dug the trench, the dome is up, so I'm just waiting for a calm, dry day when there are a few people to help to get the plastic cover over, and then I can go on and sow some seeds in time for April. I'd like to do it now really, but this is going to be the only mouse-proof place to sow seeds. Apart from perhaps the yurt, but table space is quite limited in there. And the scale I'd like to sow seeds on is so vast that I really need all this space. But it's looking good. The dome has stayed up, despite all the strong winds the other weekend. It might be a different story when it has plastic on it, but I do hope not. It's supposed to be a very, very resilient structure. I've known people, or not known people, I've seen videos of these domes in high wind and they do fare very, very well. But yeah, can't wait to get the cover on, get some things planted. And yes, there will be a full video about the construction of this greenhouse and how to do it. So I've thoroughly documented the process over the last 11 or 12 months. From the taking down of the old greenhouse to the construction of the new one. And as soon as the plastic is on, I shall stitch it all together and upload that. What a treat. Maybe. Right, let's see what we can see. All that mess needs to go back in the greenhouse when it's complete. All the pots and things. Oh, there's my spade. I was looking for that. That's unlike me. Bathtubs. I believe there are still some swamp potatoes or duck potatoes to harvest. The tops have long withered off in the frost, but the tubers are still down there. Ooh, squishy squishy. But at the moment there is a load of lovely frog spawn. Yep, the tadpoles are developing well, in their gelatinous eggs. The ducks have not managed to gobble it up like caviar this year, thanks to this old gate I put over the top. Oh no, look! A floating swamp potato. I'm surprised the ducks haven't had that too. There's so much of it this year. Hopefully soon there'll be an army of little froglets marching all over the garden. At night, ideally, hiding in the daytime against those carnivorous khaki Campbells. They think nothing of gobbling down a full-size frog. Last week I did a lot of hedge cutting. I ought to need to do that eventually. I'm going to let everything get to its full size, but just where things were encroaching on the pathways, like the enthusiastic Eliagnus multiflora just here, there are dozens of these now, because every time I cut them, not all, but I pick up a lot of the cuttings and I use them by sticking them in the ground to make more bushes. I've chosen about 10 or 15 different shrubs and trees, the ones that I know where the cuttings will probably root and do well, and I have used them to multiply the number that I have. I've made windbreaks in certain places to protect certain perennial vegetables, and to the north of the forest garden I've introduced lots of hazel cuttings to make copse or coppice areas, because it's always useful to have hazel for so many reasons. Those are going to create a wonderful shelter belt for these patches of more tender vegetables just here. Ideally, all along the edge of the access track up here, I've stuck in loads of hazel cuttings to make a divide between the south of the garden that's more garden-like and the north, which is more wild and woodland and foragey. And not all of these cuttings will take, but even if just half of them do, then that'll still be enough to, when they get to this sort of length, to lay them, to bend them over, and it'll make a nice thick hazel hedge all the way up here. Ideally. Go on. Go on, no scratching in there. You just dug up all my bulbs. Right, chickens. Dug up all the walking onions. They shall walk no longer. But interestingly, in other places where I've laid down the blackthorn brash, it has remained untouched, and not unsurprisingly, given its deadly thorny nature, which is why I wear a ring on this finger, due to an old blackthorn injury. And now I'll show you what's actually growing to eat in the garden, finally. Although it's so windy outside, I doubt you could hear me, so I'm going to settle inside and have a cup of tea and tell you about it, and then put some cutaway shots of the various plants over the top. What is growing in the forest garden and around that's tasty at the moment? I'll divide it into two categories. The things that there are to forage, that were either here already in the hedgerows or in the grasslands, or that I've introduced. But these foragey things can be foraged anywhere in England, in the woodlands and fields and hedges. The first one being dandelions. Most people consider them a weed, but that view is beginning to change. I say change, I mean change back, because they were always considered a food source before the last century or so. I needn't say very much about them, because all parts are edible, just used in different ways. Well, except the seed heads, the puffy clocks. You can't eat those. Well, you could, but they're not very nice. They're quite bitter, so that puts people off, although they're really, really good for you. I've never tried this, but if you want to make them less bitter, you can put a pot or something over them and force the leaves like you would with rhubarb, and that makes them almost sweet and tender. Dandelion leaf sandwich is always on the menu. It also makes salads a lot more diverse and interesting with those bitter flavours. There is Good King Henry, just starting to push through. You can find it on most woodland floors in Europe, and it tastes a lot like spinach, but then lots of things do in the plant world, unless you cook it in some delicious fat or spice it up with some spices. Ah, the good old bread and cheese tree. Hawthorn tips. Abundant at the moment. Nice little tasty snacks, and you can make a meal from them if you collect enough of them. There are some hops beginning to grow out there, if you can find them. Just the tips. Taking them off at this time of year and steaming them. They call them poor man's asparagus in Somerset. They taste a bit like asparagus, not quite as good, but they're abundant and they're free, and it won't impede the growing, so you can just let the vines grow up, and then you can collect the citrusy flowers later in the year for either making beer or creating a lemony flavour in stir fries, whatever you like. Nettle tips, of course. Abundant, nutritious, even more so than kale actually. Very protein packed and vitamin laden. There's lots of information out there on nettle tips, so I needn't say more, although I did make a video about this time last year. I made some nettle soup, so yeah, go and find that, see what you think. The ducks are beginning to gather now. It's their time to be herded away. They're like clockwork, those ducks. Not in the sense, I mean, they do sometimes waddle along like little clockwork toys, but I mean, they're punctual. Punctual birds. Sea beet, usually found along the coast, but it does grow inland as well. And I introduced it into the garden here a couple of years ago, and it's doing very well. It doesn't taste quite as salty as it does near the sea, but you can add salt to it. It's pretty good. I did have some sea kale, but it doesn't seem to like it here very much. Watercress. As many of you longer time viewers will know, I love watercress, especially eating it loudly in front of the camera. Cham cham cham. There is wild watercress around here, although I have introduced some that I bought in a supermarket, and it's absolutely flourishing. And again, I made a video. It's quite popular actually. It's called Grow Your Own Watercress. It's very, very easy to grow your own, but I will save that for the other video if you'd like to watch it. Ramsons, wild garlic, whatever you care to call it. It is abundant and delicious, and this really is the best time of year to pick the leaves. It can be used as a major food source in times of famine, but if you've got other things to eat, then it's better just to leave it as a medicine or a flavouring. It is far more abundant in April going through to May, but now in March I find it's the best time to pick it because the leaves aren't yet bitter and you can just eat them as they are. You don't even need to cook them. Bittercress or pennycress or landcress. It has many different names. You can't get rid of it. Anytime you cultivate or till the soil, it seems to pop up, and it has exploding little seed heads that you can actually see go, and they go everywhere. Loads of people don't like them. I don't know why, because the roots aren't very deep, they don't interfere with anything else. They make a wonderful ground cover, and they're so mineral and vitamin rich. They contain vitamin A, vitamin K, no I don't know what they... But I love it. I just pull it up, chop the root off and put it in a sandwich. It's wonderful stuff. The geese think so too, and when they were a little bit more on the loose, the pennycress population took a hit, as did the dandelions. They used to be everywhere, but the geese like them so much that now it's really difficult to find one. But if I don't pick the tasty flower heads and let them go to seed and spread, then the population ought to regenerate over the coming years. Birch sap. There's a lot to be said about birch sap. I have some birch trees to the north of the garden here as a northerly windbreak and habitat trees. Plus when the wind blows, they're spindly twigs that come down, make brilliant kindling. I've never tried collecting the sap, but I really would like to. The trees are just the right diameter now, and it's a very popular thing on the continent in Europe. Well, in this country too actually, but I've never seen anyone do it. I'd really like to. Maybe this is the year. Well, those are all the foragey things in the garden that are best at the moment. There are quite a few others, but I'm trying to keep this video brief, which it probably isn't. But the introduced vegetables or things that you might find in the kitchen garden are the perennial leeks. In fact, there are still a few annual leeks left from last year, but the perennial leeks are prolific and they're doing wonderfully, and they're very similar to the annual leeks, but they've got a bit of a garlicky flavour and they're a bit thinner, but they are just going mad, so they're very much on the menu. Kale, in both its forms, either the Dorbenton's kale, the Taunton Dean kale, or the tree collard type kale, that again I made a video about, called the perfect plant for the lazy allotmenteer, and it really is. It grows everywhere and I love it. Soups, stews, curries, crisps, really nice kale crisps. Rub them in oil and salt and pepper, put them in the oven for 20 minutes. Crunch, crunch, crunch. There are still quite a few shallots left. Yeah, little onions. Well, they're from the multiplier onion family, and I ought to have harvested them all last autumn, but I left a few on the ground accidentally and they've come back up again, and yeah, good backup supply actually. So shallots, that's shallot. That's not shallot because rhubarb. It's not at its best yet, but it certainly is edible. I ought to wait for the stems to get a little bit bigger really, and if I were to have forced any of it, then it would be absolutely perfect now. But yeah, rhubarb this month. I still have quite a few ocker left that I harvested in the autumn. Nice sweet lemony crunchy ocker, and a few potatoes as well. Again, I made a video about the no-dig method of growing potatoes, and I had great success. So much so, I've still got some left. In terms of flavouring or spices or other medicinal plants, bay is just never-ending, bay leaves. Mint, well, it's unstoppable. Sage, that's doing very well. Rosemary, huge, great big rosemary bushes everywhere. And in terms of eggs, duck eggs every day. I've got a bit tired of them really, but they are everywhere, and that's the one thing I do sell. I sell a few to local shops and give them away as presents. And chicken eggs. They're only little tiny bantam eggs, but they lay every day. And those are the things that are on the menu in the forest garden in March. Still too windy to record anything outside, but I will bid you all a good day now. Really good to see you all again. Thank you for watching, and see you very soon with another video. Quite soon. Need to go and put the ducks away before the foxes come out. Bye. I forgot Mahonia, didn't I? They're a sweet well, not sweet exactly, but they're a delicious, well, there are Mahonia berries growing on the Mahonia bush, and they're a really welcome snack for breakfast or any other time of day at this time of year, because there are no other berries growing. So yeah, add those to the list. May the sun shine on you all. That sounds a bit twee. A beautiful springtime to you all. May the sun shine a little more. Yeah, that'll do. It's silliness o'clock, but then when isn't it here? Bye.